Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Tuesday, May the 5th. And welcome to our commentary. Well, I want to talk a little bit about Cinco de Mayo and a few other things that I had here on my agenda. But I just watched an unbelievable press conference. And I have to say, pretty unbelievable press conference from Secretary of State Rubio. And he answered a bunch of questions, and I thought he was absolutely incredible in answering the questions and explaining our policy when it comes to Iran or just in general our foreign policy. I thought he was absolutely great, and I can see why. I always thought that Rubio had a great ability to communicate. I've always felt that's his strength. He's an intelligent man and has the ability to communicate that intelligence. And I think what I saw today is just absolutely stunning. The way he explained Iran, and he said something that I had never thought about this. I've been following this Iran story, my gosh, going back to President Reagan. You remember President Reagan had problems with Iran on the Straits of Hormuz, and then other presidents have had the same problem. And I have never heard, well, actually, it goes even before Reagan. I mean, President Carter, of course, had the embassy problem back in November of 1979. That's where all of this mess started. But anyway, over the years, we've talked about the Straits, and I have never heard anybody explain it the way President or Secretary Rubio. I said President Rubio, maybe someday, but I don't know. But Secretary Rubio, I never heard anybody explain it like that before. We basically said, look, this is international waters. They are putting mines in international waters. They are interrupting commercial traffic in international waters. That's illegal. You cannot do that. You certainly cannot put mines in international waters to prevent ships to go through. I mean, that's not a power that you have. And I just thought that was such a good argument. I had never heard that before. All these years I've been following this, I had never actually heard that argument before. Hey, this is an international waterway. It doesn't belong to Iran. This is international waters. That's why all these ships go through. And I thought the explanation of, hey, they don't get to put mines and, interrupt commercial traffic. I thought that was one of the best explanations that I've ever heard. Very simple, very much to the point. And I think most Americans can hear that and go, you know what? Makes sense. Makes sense. So I thought it was an absolutely fantastic press conference. I would like to see Secretary Rubio speak more like this. I think this is something that he masters. He obviously masters foreign policy. It's always been an area of interest to him. And I think he's doing the best job as a Secretary of State. I think maybe he may go down as the most consequential Secretary of State that we've had since Henry Kissinger. The last time that I remember, and that would have been in the early 70s, I guess, under President Nixon. The last time that I remember a Secretary of State being more prominent and more imposing and just having the kind of influence that he has on foreign policy as well as the president. The last time I remember, you have to go back again to Secretary Kissinger. That's kind of the last time. So I thought it was fabulous. I hope he does it more often. And, I have no idea what's going to happen in 2028. I think people who think about Rubio in 2028 may be underestimating J.D. Vance or Vice President Vance, who I think has also very good communication skills, especially on domestic issues. So the two of them sort of had their expertise. I think J.D. Vance is excellent on domestic issues, and I think Secretary Rubio is excellent on foreign policy issues. So maybe they can come together in 28. Wouldn't be a bad team if they did. But anyway, congratulations to Secretary Rubio for an absolutely amazing press conference today. Just absolutely, absolutely great. Well, today is Cinco de Mayo, May 5th. And, I've written several posts about this over the years because I lived in Mexico for 4 years, as some of you may know. And I lived down there, and they don't celebrate Cinco de Mayo the way we do. Heck, most Mexicans don't even know what we celebrate up here. And I've explained to them over the years that Cinco de Mayo is not really anything other than a way of recognizing Mexican heritage in the United States. That's what I think it is. And it's a good idea that we celebrate Mexican heritage, given the amount of Mexicans that we have, particularly here in the Southwest. So I love Cinco de Mayo. I love the food, going out to eat on Cinco de Mayo. What a great day to go out for lunch, Cinco de Mayo. But down in Puebla, down in Mexico, Cinco de Mayo is the Battle of Puebla, which was the war between Mexican troops and French troops back in 1862, I believe. And that's what that is down there. They celebrate that day as the Battle of Puebla. Up here, we celebrate it for totally different reasons, completely different reasons. What we celebrate up here is, as I said, Mexican Heritage Day. That's what we celebrate. And that's good. I'm glad we do that. But not the Battle of Puebla is something completely different. So happy Cinco de Mayo to all my Mexican friends. And I hope you had a chance to go out for lunch today, because this is, if there's a day of the year when you want to go out for Mexican food, this is it. Because every Mexican restaurant today has some specialty going on. So this is a great day to go out and enjoy lunch or out to dinner on Cinco de Mayo. By the way, the word Cinco de Mayo, I guess it's easy to pronounce. Maybe that's why we say Cinco de Mayo, but it's a great holiday. That's all I can tell you. When I have a post over at the American Thinker today about Senator Fetterman, there's a lot of talk about Senator Fetterman quitting the Democrat Party and coming over to the Republican Party. I don't think that's going to happen. First of all, you have to understand that Senator Fetterman has a 93% record voting with the Democrats. So I don't know where he's going to fit in coming over to the Republican Party. Now, I'm not underestimating Senator Fetterman. I think it's great, for example, that he has stood up to his party on issues like Israel, on this Iran war. I think his position on the Iran war is totally logical to me. Why wouldn't you want to degrade and downgrade Iran? And then, of course, he's also been outspoken on the open borders, which I appreciate him doing that. But I don't see him switching. Now, what he faces now, though, is he's got a very tough primary coming up. Now, the good news for Senator Fetterman is that the primary is not going to be till 2028. So he's got plenty of time. And that's a long time, really. He might, things will change probably quite a bit by then. But it may not. And there are already people in the Democrat Party who want to primary him and get him out of the Senate. Look, that may happen because, these Democrats are pretty good at primaries. And they've been primarying a lot of people and getting a lot of moderates out. So they may just get Fetterman out. So I think what the Republicans ought to do in 28 in Pennsylvania is get ready to nominate a strong candidate who can win. Because I think no matter whether Fetterman is their nominee or not, he's going to be very weak from the primary he's going to go through. He may not even win the primary. So I think what the Republicans have to do really is to try to go out and find a strong candidate for 28 who can win in Pennsylvania. That's what they need to do. And who that is, I'm not sure. But that's what they need to be doing. Look, they picked up this fellow, David McCormick, who is the other Republican senator there. He was a very strong candidate. They need to find somebody like that to run for the Senate and maybe pick up that seat. And he may not even be running against Fetterman. That's what I'm saying. There's a primary coming up that Fetterman is going to have to win. And I'm not sure he will win that, especially given all of the dissent and all the anger in the Democrat Party. So we'll see how that turns out. I have a post coming out Wednesday morning about an article that came out of the London newspaper, The Guardian, where they're talking about apparently President Obama and Mrs. Obama. This is President Obama who admitted this to the newspaper, that I guess that the Trump presidency is creating some tension in their home because apparently they want to be more vocal and against Trump, and maybe not, maybe yes. And there's, I guess, a little bit of tension in the Obama household about this. I don't know if that's true, but it came out in a London newspaper. We'll see. We'll see. But look, I think right now what's happening with Obama is that he's beginning to realize that his legacy is falling apart. That's what I really think is going on. His legacy is falling apart. Whether it was the Iran nuclear deal, the Paris climate change accords, neither those two things never got off the ground because he was never able to get them approved by a Democrat Senate. So they never got off the ground. And then you have Obamacare. That's been a real problem. So there's not a lot of things out of the Obama years that we're talking about that are successful, that is. And I think that's what's hurting Obama's ego. The fact that his legacy is melting and melting fast, and there's not much there for historians to look at. I guess he will always be the first black president. Yes, that's an important point. But beyond that, there's not a heck of a lot there to remember him by. And that's what I think is really upsetting President Obama, that his legacy is just fading and fading away. Well, there's something going up in Canada here before we say goodbye. Something going up in Canada. Alberta, the province of Alberta, I guess they're going to take a vote to see if they can separate from the country and be their own independent country. From what I read this morning, they've got the signatures, but apparently it's very complicated to do it because there's all kinds of issues, all kinds of things, all kinds of hurdles. Even after they vote, they have to go through all kinds of hurdles after that. So it may never happen. But I think it really shows, from what some of my Canadian friends are saying, I think it really shows just how much damage Trudeau and his liberal policies, particularly all the climate change fanatical policies of Trudeau, how much damage that did to Alberta. And of course, Alberta is their energy province, and they took all kinds of steps to prevent Alberta from exporting oil and all of that. And I think that eventually people there didn't like it. So apparently that's what's really behind all the anger in Alberta with the federal government down there. So, or up there, I should say. But it's still very difficult to break from Canada, from what I've read. But the fact that they've got the signatures to do it, and they're going to take a vote, apparently, well, that should be that. Hopefully, will send a message to Ottawa, the federal government up in Ottawa, that the provinces don't want to be pushed around as they were under Prime Minister Obama. Under Prime Minister Trudeau. I always said Trudeau was the Canadian Obama. That's probably why I messed up the names. Well, thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.